Nyasha, how are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here.
Excellent. Thank you for joining for a convo about the good stuff.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, that was a simple decision after I'd seen some of your stuff on the webinar with the foundation. Really enjoyed that with John Mundy and your guesting on Maria Felipe's channel. Really, yeah, really nice, really cool.
Thank you.
So I'm
Such
going to
an
go.
honor to share.
I beg your pardon?
Wherever I'm invited by the spirit, I'm just so happy to go and share.
Awesome. So I'm going to dive straight in with a quote that I've heard you say, which I really like. I open all the doors in my mind to the light.
I
Tell us
love that.
more.
So, I don't know, like it just came to me from spirit probably in maybe one of my like prayers or I do a lot of channeling from spirit. And that it came to me super strong one time, that and I saw it like an image. I saw it like all these doors where I'm keeping the light but blocked out, the ego of mind is like, no, not here, not here, not here, not here. But I just like, because we can really work with, metaphor and symbolism
Yeah.
and it speaks really powerfully to the subconscious. So then I was just like, oh, well, I can see if I can see that there are doors closed, and I'm able to create that image in my mind, I can work with the power of the mind to create the image of all of the doors at once opening. And I'm like, okay, there might be some pretty stuck doors, so maybe I won't actually open all of them, but if I hold the intention to open all the doors and then I visualize them being blasted open, the light just streaming through, I'm gonna get the light into a lot of hidden places. And so I found it so powerful. It's for me, it's like it's like a yes. It's such a big yes to the light and to awakening from, resistance to love and resistance to healing. I don't know what happened there. My internet must have died. I remember what I was saying. So should I just go straight back in? Okay.
Absolutely.
So, and it just feels like for me, I'm saying that my will to awaken is stronger than our ego mind's resistance to the light.
Mm,
And so it's empowering, and it focuses on, what our capacity to direct the light, and to be the leader of our own awakening with spirit, because the light will go where it's called.
mm,
So if we invite it, it's going to come, it's just about how much we're allowing it. And so that, that quote is just symbol of the ultimate allowance that I can manage in that moment. So, like as many doors as I can open right now, let them be open and let the light flood in. And
mm,
it's also, within that is the understanding that the light is, attempting to flood all the doors, but we're blocking it,
mm,
and so it's actually very easy for us to be eclipsed, for the light to just shine everywhere if we allow it. Um, we don't have to make the light. The light is there, the light's on its way, the light is trying to come into us in every moment.
mm,
So it's just that our job is to be open to it and to look at where the doors are closed, where our mind is closed. And as much as we can, use the power of our will to open those doors, to open our mind and to like, break through that egoic resistance, that calcification, that density that can, sometimes feel like it's stronger than our mental power and the will to awaken, but it's not, So yeah, that's what I feel to share about that.
in response to hearing you say that about a bit from the course where it says, for the ego must seem to keep fear from you to hold your allegiance, yet it must engender fear in order to maintain itself. Which is just a perfect demonstration of its madness and its just insane circuitous routes that it takes. But I think the reach of our demonstration, when we do remove these blocks to the allowing is just such a fantastic word. Allowing and resistance are almost like two incredible words for the vocabulary, aren't they, in this
Yeah.
system? And they, the reach of our demonstration. And there's something that you were talking about as like your self-observation when there's no goal and you're not trying to do anything. You experience the deep presence of the Holy Spirit. And I thought that was really cool. That And something I've heard Ken Wapnick say before as well is like, you've got a gift, you've got an offering, you've got an expression. Okay, so now strip all the ego involvement out of it so that the spirit can have that space, and then it'll just take it wherever it's meant to go if you can reduce your part in it to the minimum.
Yes. This is essentially like, what I do in my work, it's just I've become very good at getting Nyasha out of the way. And then miracles happen, and I don't need to know how necessarily, you know what I mean? I can just allow. I just allow the spirit through me. I allow myself to be used. I become, a vessel and a vehicle, which is my highest purpose and function.
Mm.
And, at the beginning when I started to do that, when I started to feel the guidance towards opening as a vessel that way, as a channel, I had ego layers come up, but I had to work through like, oh, what if I can't do it? And what if it's not right? And what if what if I'm faking it or something? Like, what if it's not real? Like, I didn't really believe on some level. Can I really do that? Like, actually possible to just empty yourself and let this divine light come? And how, like, like I just had these different layers of fear. And actually, it wasn't super hard to get through them. I think the real breakthrough came in the doing it, in the moment of saying yes to becoming empty and to letting the spirit come through. And then I saw how easy it was actually to let the spirit take you once you've already, like, the first part is really the work of saying, I'm willing to be the channel for the light. I'm willing to be used. I'm willing to be taken over.
Mm.
Which is actually huge ego work in itself, because the ego is like, don't get me out the way. I'm the number one here. I'm the important one. Listen to what I have to say, my personality, my little opinions, and my personality gifts or whatever. And actually, what's great is that I really have come into such a deep knowing that the most valuable thing that could come through this image of Nyasha is the light of spirit. And so, if anything, I value that much more than anything else that my personality could do. And other people are like, oh, but your personality is that and that. But I know that the real value is when the light is coming through me, and that's the highest gift to myself and to all. And yeah, we can all do it. I always say this to anyone, like everyone is a channel for the spirit. Everyone can let the light come through, powerfully, purely, truly, but you have to believe that you can, you have to know that because I think on a subtle layer, often there's an unworthiness of like, I can't actually allow, the light is better than me or something,
Mm.
which comes from a sense of separation from it,
Mm.
but we're just revealing the self, we're revealing our true nature,
Mm.
like the image and the illusion fall away,
Mm.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also there's a sense sometimes, I've experienced like if you go with the invitation and you allow the energy to give you the confidence to make the expression, sometimes it's like, oh, am I going to get caught out? Or, because when the ego switch turns back on again and realizes it wasn't part of what preceded it, and it's got no handle, it doesn't see its role and its place in what's just happened, then it's obvious that it's going to go, you know, what happened there? So it's like the light went out and then the light came back on for it. And it was like,
Yes, absolutely. And I've shared about this sometimes, where like um I'm so gone that I'm like, it's like I'm out. It's like I'm just not even in the experience. And then when I come like, back into the awareness of the personality self, then I'm processing the experience from my perspective afterwards. Because I wasn't there then. So I'm like, oh my God, like that happened. And what was happening in the space like around, like, what was other people's experience, like what, I'm experiencing it myself as my personality. And I'm like, oh my God, that was wow, that was amazing. Obviously in the moment I'm not there having that awareness. I'm just emptied. So that really like is such a confirmation of what you just shared, that that ego self has to be gone, but then it still wants to grasp it and like make sense of it within its own like limited idea of reality of like, what do I want to see in this, and how do I want to like remember this, and I don't know what's my version of this.
but that invitation, that orientation of the will, to like invite invite energy in in terms of like how we're set up, how the world's set up. It's just the complete opposite orientation of how everything's presented, isn't it? It's like, what do you mean, silent inside so that that can be filled with something that's not me. Are you mad? What could be more important than me?
And then this is other ego confusion that comes, like where people are channeling the spirit, but they don't realize that they realize they don't fully like recognize it as such. So then they identify with like channeling as being themselves.
Hmm.
And the ego tries to like build itself up based on like the creative expression that's being channeled through them, and that gets entangled in it, but it's actually not to do with them. They're just not realizing necessarily that they're just letting the light come through,
Hmm.
you know. And so then other people also give that feedback, and this happens with me sometimes. People are like, wow, you are this, you're so this, and they're trying to make it about my ego, and I always just say, it's not me, it's not me, it's not me. I'm
Hmm.
just, I didn't really do it. I didn't do anything. I just know, well, the only thing I did was get out of the way. And I realized that people hear me and they don't, unless they've revealed that in their own experience, they don't, it's like they don't believe me. It's like they still think it's my ego or something, and they want to then often, because they've received the light at such a high frequency, what
Hmm.
happens is the egos are always looking to like compartmentalize. This ego is better than mine, or worse than mine, above mine, and
Hmm.
then people want to like elevate my ego in their regard of egoic hierarchies because they see the light streaming through. And
Hmm.
I'm like, please, that's my person, like my personality, the body, like that's not the one that's doing, like, I'm
Hmm.
just getting out of the way. But it doesn't matter really if I say it. You have to experience it yourself, I think, to really understand it. But everyone can, and everyone's had moments of it. It's just there's not always that recognition
Hmm.
of what's happening.
Hmm. And I guess in that recognition, when you acknowledge it, then that's how you start to build your storehouse of like expression, your language for yourself to sort of reference and go, okay, that's what happened then. Okay, now, that's another piece of like the undoing, isn't it? Of the atonement to be able to go,
Yeah.
that experience showed me a little glimpse that reminded me of the memory of truth and reality. The more of those that I can align with, the bigger the picture becomes, the brighter the light becomes, the stronger the connection and the association with that identity.
Absolutely. And I was actually speaking about this with some of my students, and I have a year-long group, where we're joining with the teachings of Course in Miracles, and we pray every Monday. And I usually guide the prayer, and then I was guided to start to invite them to guide the prayer. And
No,
so they've been like taking turns,
yeah,
so they have a turn. And then one of the women did it, and she it was a beautiful prayer. We all received it as so powerful, and she shared afterwards how for her she was like, oh, her ego was super loud and how she was
mm-hmm.
shaking, and it brought up so much. And we were talking afterwards, and I was saying how it's like that's such a a symbol of when we say yes to like allowing the light to come through us, the ego like is like getting burned up, it's getting purified. Like all of the egoic layers that would have stopped us from choosing to say yes to be these lighthouses, it
Mm-hmm.
has to go. So it's a clearing, even though for her she was like, oh, my ego was just getting activated. I'm like, no, it's getting cleared out. You're getting purified in that moment, because the frequency of light you're allowing to come through you is illuminating all of that egoic conditioning that was in the way. So it wasn't until you would say yes to doing that, and that was her first time doing that, that you
Mm-hmm.
would be able to look at all this egoic architecture that was actually unconsciously stopping you from shining that way and allowing the spirit to shine through you. So it was really beautiful to witness that, and for me, to see, and all of them coming into the light, and their confidence in their capacity to beam the light, because they know that we're always shining the light all the time, and that's true. But there is something, we allow more light when we intentionally say, I'm here as a vessel right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fill me, use me, come into me, take over me, because of the power of our mind, inevitably then more light comes through. And so, as much as we can, we get to be all in that living prayer of like, use me, use me, use me, fill me with the light, use me for your plan, spirit, like shine in all the places that I haven't wanted to look. And I had a big moment this week of, on Monday, I was like, on my walk at like, I think it was like 5:30 in the morning. I'm integrating a lot of new habits at the moment. And I was feeling super connected to spirit. And I was just like, spirit, any work I've been avoiding, come into me, show me. I'll do any work I need to do, shine the light there, shine the light. And then like a few days later, the ego stuff was coming up, the trauma, the conditioning, some of the beliefs. It was around a core wound, which always points back to the core wound of separation from God, but it was around a core wound of my mother, around feeling unworthy of, receiving unconditional love and feeling like I need to win love, perform for love, these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And my dad ended up holding space for me, and we had this beautiful, beautiful, like joining holy instant miracle of like, just unraveling into the truth. And it was so beautiful, and that came because I invited the light to, like, so there's a difference. So you can just invite the light and say, open all the doors, right? Which is gonna, it's symbolic too. But when I had the intention of, really shine in all the places that I've been resisting, shine the light there, like in all the ways that I'm blocked and all the ways that my ego doesn't want to awaken, like shine it there. I'm really directing the light to the like most sticky places where my ego really is wanting to hide it. So it's very specific. And, so then it brings up those things that I haven't wanted, my ego hasn't wanted to face there.
No.
And we can all do this, it's the perfect example of how we are the leaders of our own awakening. But, be prepared that when you hold that type of prayer and you mean it, like what comes up doesn't feel good, but that's why the ego hasn't wanted us to go there, But then on the other side of it is immense light and freedom and liberation and everything you truly seek. But it's funny because like for a little like while I sort of temporarily like forgot, like I was like, oh, and then when like at some point in the process, like, okay, of course I'm in this experience now. I asked for this. I asked to be shown. I asked to go into the like most deeply buried thing that I don't want to go into. And I'm so grateful for it. I feel so much better, like, a huge weight off, that I didn't even really realize I was carrying consciously.
Beautiful. And I'll tell you what comes to mind there, listening to you describing some of those moments with your group and leading the prayers, is like, I think because the course is so cerebral and so wordy and so dense, and like, you don't just lightly come to the course and, I fancy flicking through that 1,300 pages of like
I don't, no, not really.
really intense material that's going to deconstruct my entire belief system in who I am. um, that can be quite fearful for some, for someone to know that they've got a voice and they've got something valid to say. It's like you don't have to have studied it for 30 years or 20 years or 40 years or whatever. Everybody's got an equal voice. So with that format where people get to lead the prayer and where everybody's listening in on them, that experience to then maybe watch it back or listen to it back for the person who did that leading and go, oh, actually that was all right, wasn't it? That went okay. And that's how it's this thing again of familiarizing yourself with an aspect that was hidden, which again, coming back to what you're describing, is like, everything unconscious was once conscious. And some stuff is like top shelf, top drawer, right at hand, like that, and the other stuff's right at the back of the cupboard in the bottom drawer, hidden away. And because there's no degrees with this material, as the course explains to us, there's no hierarchy to the illusions. Everything has to come to the light. And again, I think that's a really beautiful part of A Course in Miracles as a setup, is that orientation again of bring darkness to the light. Don't take light to the darkness, because as the Course says, that then makes error real. You bring the error to the light. Light in its nature, guess what it does? It just dispels darkness. You don't
Shines it away.
So yeah, I think that's really powerful that people find their voice in a nice, safe, gentle way. Because, like I say, it can be quite a daunting thing to go, oh, shall I speak up about this really cerebral system in the company of, or in the community of lots of like very earnest students and learned people, and yeah, that can stop someone from going, you know what, I'm just going to say what I think, or I'm going to let it come through me and find that
Yeah.
voice.
Yes, 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 yes. The light wants to shine through all, it wants to shine everywhere. So if we're not allowing it, then we're blocking it. And
Mm,
our liberation is going to be in allowing it to come through. So I love to encourage everyone
mm,
anyone I meet to know that, in their own way too. It doesn't matter where they're at, whether they're studying the course or not.
yeah,
Everyone's out here shining the light of love in the
mm,
moments that they whether it happens by accident sometimes, that they're awake in a moment, and they join
mm,
in the holy instant, and they extend love, in a look, in a smile, in a loving thought, in
mm,
a, however love is being extended, it's perfect and it's whole and it's complete and it's felt by all, and it's, part of the plan.
mm,
Yeah, so I love, 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 love to empower people around their divine
mhm,
contribution, and the note that they offer to the tapestry of awakening light, and
mm.
how needed it is, how all of the different streams of light weave together perfectly into the one, and you know
Fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
And the fruit, what's the fruit? What's the fruit of this system? Is it that?
The fruit of the system.
The fruit of like what Course in Miracles points you towards, not obviously exclusively, because it, one of the things that, well, one of the many things that I love about it is the freedom that it has to say, yeah, go and, sometimes I'll like talk to people and say, imagine you're in a big food hall and there's loads of stalls in there and people are all selling recipes and dishes that they've created. And if you went up to somebody who was making something and they said to you, just try my food, don't go anywhere else and try anyone else's, then you'd be like, what, really? Which is the way a lot of religion is set up. And then with the coffee,
Yeah,
it goes, you know what, this is just a way, go and have a
yeah,
look
I
around
know,
the
it's
food
so
hall.
great. I love it. I love how, like, you know and it's funny because even though that is actually explicitly stated in the course, because, for example, in my own experience, when I started speaking about the course, I was so passionate about it, and it
Mm,
has such an authority in it that's conveyed when you speak about, the teachings. That authority is conveyed, and then immediately what I would notice is that, our ego would, in response to that, sometimes be like, you're saying it's the only way, but there are many ways. And so you don't even say that, but the ego has such resistance to the authority of truth that it's like, let me try and say that this is trying to like make other ways wrong. Like it projects all of this stuff, that this is trying to be imposing, even though none of that's happening. And that's because, it's just the mirror. Of course, is such a clear mirror. It's such a clear mirror of truth, and there are obviously other pathways too that hold that mirror beautifully. And I love that spirit orchestrates our awakening journeys perfectly. So whatever's meant to, help is going to help everyone. And not everyone's path is the course, but everyone's path is love. So it's the course in the sense of that.
nice. So I guess with like the idea of what's the fruit, it's like, what's the rich pickings from this particular system, this signpost towards love or towards truth.
That, you already are the love that you seek. It's one of the key things. That it is the love is, but we don't need to become it.
Nice.
That anything that tells us that something else is other than love is a lie. you know and it's here and it's now. We don't need to go anywhere to find it. And the revelation of it is a choice that we all have. the power to make. No one can take that choice from you.
Hmm.
In any situation, that choice remains. That choice is the only choice that we ever need to make, in truth, to feel ourselves, to feel peace, wholeness, faith, communion, understanding. And everything that we seek is within us. We know it already, we just appear to have forgotten. And that amnesia is temporary, and we are the remedy. We are the awakening light. So we choose to awaken. And when we choose it, will be so, because we are one, the mind of God. We are the mind of God, in truth. So, it's empowering. For me, the course is so empowering. It disempowers all of the illusions of lack and separation and hardship and struggle and suffering, and it cuts them all off and says, none of this is true. And it empowers us in the truth, our essence of our connection to eternity, of our capacity to allow miracles through us. It's just a mirror. It's a mirror to the truth. It shows us who we are, and the amount that we can receive from that mirror depends on how much we're willing to look into it. The more you look, the more you'll see. The more you look, the more you receive. The more you look, the more everything else falls away. And only truth remains. The path of ease. It's the end of struggle. It's the awakening of home within. Ah, you can feel it right now as we join with the light. We feel it. It's just such peace, ease.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can use words as like signposts to point towards it, but they're all they're all just a concession, aren't they? It's like a limitation, something that's beyond language, but still, it's cool to talk about. It's okay to use words. There's a phrase that I picked up somewhere along the line that says, "We can use the language of duality without believing in it."
I
And
like that.
otherwise, it's like conversations would be very short and non-existent. So
And I mean, it's that there are times for that as well, but you have to be ready for that, to be able, where you can just sit and join in silence, and it's so profound,
mm,
and it's so much communication without words,
mm,
and it's revelation, and it's knowledge, and it's incredible. And on my retreats and also in my prayers, we often have periods of extended silence and
mm,
joining, and it's more than you could say with words, and but it's understood. It's just a shared joining, and it's just understood what it
mm,
is. It's understood, and that's it. It's such a reminder whenever we join like that. We're in heaven, and we're just like, this is why. This is why we do all that uncomfortable ego illumination undoing. We continuously look at the ego's aims and stories and like, and sometimes that process doesn't always feel like heaven, but it gets you to the point where you can allow revelation of that state of mind. The exhale, and it's so beyond worth it. Yeah. For even one holy instant. Just so worth
there's the fruit.
it.
There's the fruit.
Yeah, that's the fruit.
Awesome. I'm going to read out I'm going to read out a couple of things that you said, which I really like. That it's so natural for us to be love. It's the most natural thing that we could ever be. And paying attention to when we're feeling something other than ourselves and noticing that contrast as an invitation to reawaken more deeply to the love that we are. Because only when we're choosing to reveal our nature as love are we going to feel the peace. That doesn't involve doing anything. It doesn't involve saying anything or going anywhere necessarily. Sometimes it does. And we just get to listen for the way. And our listening, excuse me, that's a shame. I've lost my flow.
And our listening.
Yeah. I'm reminding you of what you said. Here
Yeah.
and our listening appears to get stronger. Now, there's an irony to me not finding that. There's so yeah, our listening appears to get stronger and clearer the more we willingly open to it. And it's not that we have more or less capacity to listen. We're just not necessarily open to the fullness of how clearly we can listen in a moment. We can listen perfectly if we believe we can, if we choose to, if we're open and willing, and if we're letting spirit take over us, and we're all being perfectly guided to awaken our mind and our one mind together.
Wow, thank you. I mean, I feel like I'm receiving that for the first time because I didn't write it, obviously.
Yeah.
It came through me, but it's really beautiful. I do remember writing some of that, it's not completely unknown to me, but I don't know when exactly it was written or anything like that. Was it recently-ish?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something that I've done a few times on the podcast is read stuff back to people and they're like, oh wow, and it's almost like not something I've consciously set out to do, but as it's happened a few times, it's like you see the gift of what has been received by myself or others who've heard that.
Yeah.
Like, hey, when you gave us this gift, this is the gift you gave us. Like, wow,
I'm
that's
like,
quite
wow,
nice. Yeah.
that was really helpful and yeah, that's quite, I mean, like, it's a mirror, it's another mirror because it just shows how the ego still can just distort things. And that's why sometimes I find it really helpful to read like things that people have written about my work because I'm like, oh,
Mm,
my ego tries to tell me like ultimately the ego doesn't want me to shine the light. So tries
sure.
to like tell me, these stories of whatever it is, not good enough and lack
Mm,
and
mm,
imperfection and contract, don't shine, don't shine.
yeah.
And then it somehow leads to a subconscious doubting in my capacity to be the channel, even though I know I can do it and I know it's always powerful. And then I read these things and I'm like, whoa, I definitely need to keep shining the light then because wow, look what happens when I get my ego out of the way enough to say yes and look at the impact on my siblings and therefore myself.
Mm,
But yeah, that was so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that, truly.
yeah. Well, I think, it's interesting the reach of our demonstration, in the course it'll say to teach is to demonstrate. You can only ever be where you're meant to be. And, he says like, the voice says to Helen, it's like, I don't choose my channels wrongly. And the reach of that demonstration is just I think you've pointed to it a number of times in the conversation. It's just outside of our understanding of how far those ripples travel, and we don't need to know, do we? But like I said about the fact that it's so cerebral and it's so like heady, when you do get those reflections back that go, oh right, okay, I'm doing all right. Yeah, okay.
Like a signpost. It becomes a signpost to say, keep going that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's something else as well that I really liked where you were saying faith is easy, when we look at the reality of what it is we're having faith in. And you then said, be the leading force in love, opposed to being reactive to a perceptive evaluation of our measurement of love. It's like, mic drop. Love that. Be the leading force in love, opposed to being reactive to a perceptive evaluation of our measurement of love. It's really cool because it's just, it's guided, it's like not occupying with a concept or thought. It's just by leading, it's you have to step out to lead. It's like, what?
Yeah. And you're going above the battleground, like because I love to talk about this, how the ego, like when we witness the ego, it mirrors the ego. Just ego, ego, ego. So then it can come this like ego, 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 ego. Just like Chico's gonna win. And it used to be, no, I'm going to be the leading force of love. It's just like above the battleground. And then it's just like, no, this love is regardless of any ego stuff. And then the egos in the situation, well, you've chosen to let your ego get out the way, at least for that moment. So you've chosen to elevate into love. And then naturally, often what happens is like the egoic conflict falls away, which is then love, dissolving that to some extent. And sometimes the ego, as perceived in another, rises towards that and answers, answer that call to love in a way, and that extension of love, like, yeah, I just feel like it allows that alchemy. So we always have that power, ego makes us feel powerless, and like love is always so empowering because we can always choose it, we can always access it. If we want to know what would love do, we will be told, we will be shown, and we know because of how it feels, we feel ourselves, and suddenly we go from feeling powerless to feeling like, I've got the answer. I've got the message. Like now I feel good. And this doesn't involve anyone changing or anyone saying or doing anything. I'm right in myself, and nothing can, like nothing can knock that. Love can't be knocked. Love can't be knocked. Love just is. So it just, it's amazing. We have that power. We have that power. It's the most empowering thing, is that we can choose love in any moment. I love it. I love it. Ah, yes, I love to talk about this stuff so much. It fills me with so much light.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think I like this, like I said earlier, when there's no goal, when you're not trying to do anything, you experience the deep presence of the Holy Spirit. Yeah, that's stayed with me quite a lot recently. And like I said, it sort of ties in with this thing that Ken Wapnick had said to someone about stripping the ego involvement. And because I'm a musician, because I've got like a new record coming out, and it's like I'm being really conscious of the energetic signature of that offering, and really trying to like let go of any expectation or just anything about it really, and just going, all right, this has happened. Apparently I was involved, apparently. I really like it. It's really lovely. Takes me to this place. What do you want to do with it? You have it, you do something with it, and no goal. So yeah, I think that's really been a valuable and purposeful and pertinent thing that has landed in my thinking lately. So I appreciate
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I resonate with what you're saying for sure around like releasing all of the egoic goals, right? Which is like the attachment to
it.
validation and external measurable outcomes of, perceived success and all these sorts of things. And then what I love to do is realize that my will is the spirit. So I'm just like, however I can help this to reach whoever it's meant to reach, to, do whatever it's meant to do. Like I'm
Mm,
here, use me. I'm here, I'm available for the highest, possible outcome as willed by you.
mm,
Because I feel like often, even though we're like consciously letting go of the egoic attachment to the what we want it. There's still these to be. There's still this subconscious desire to like on some level to be validated or
Yeah.
recognized by the ego. To be, maybe this is going to be the one that's going to, So then, like it's like consciously amplifying the will of spirit and
Mm.
saying, I'm willing to do anything that's going to help that. It's a way of like still empowering ourselves towards inspired action as willed for the highest possible outcome, and the highest possible outcome is spirit's plan being completely fulfilled without any interference from our egoic resistance, like our ego, like because sometimes then what I've noticed a pattern in my ego when I in the process of sharing creativity over the years
Mm.
and is that it's like one of the ways that the ego protects itself is by contracting something, keeping it smaller, not letting it reach people as much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So as because if we're like, hey, I'm not gonna like, I don't want this to reach a lot of people personally for my ego reasons, but if that's spirit's will, I want that to happen. What the ego can subconsciously do is like, actually subconsciously like contract the where that light could go, because it doesn't want to have the negative image of this wasn't good enough or this wasn't recognized or this, because
Mm.
there's still, with that whole process of birthing, it's like there's
Mm.
that anticipation of like it's the moment where the light reaches
Mm.
beyond where it's been contained,
Mm.
and so my intention is just how can it fly and how can it flood wherever it's meant to go, and the specifics of that outcome is up to spirit, but I want my energy to be actively like in service to the highest, and the
Mm.
highest would be like the most coherent amplification of that vibration. Yeah. And so sometimes that means putting in work in the launch process, to serve that aim. And that's also where you get to be surrender and you're not attached. But it's like I'm willing to work as guided by you, spirit,
Mm.
to help this to be amplified as you will, to really like, because we have will and agency there, like to align with, we can do things that will affect how easily the people that are meant to reach it are going to reach it. For example, if you release music and you never tell anyone about it and you don't less people are going to hear it, and then you go like, oh no, I'm scared that people won't like it, so I'm not going to tell people, for example. But if you're like, oh,
Mm.
I don't care about what my ego says,
Mm.
like I'm gonna carry this light, I've been gifted this torch and I'm here to carry it forward. I'm going to carry it and offer it and make it widely available, and whoever's meant to take the torch from me, like they can take it. I'm not holding it, it's not mine, I'm just the passer of the torch, but I'm going to pass the torch and I'm going to put the work in to pass the torch as guided from faith and trust and joy and non-attachment. So it's still like using the power of will and inspired action, but not from egoic motivations,
Mm.
and then not from like just passivity where the ego can still be actually at work and holding the light on some level, like contracting the light a little bit and like hiding it.
Yeah, really powerful, really excellently explained. And I'm thinking of like the self-prophesizing aspect of the ego trying to keep something small, and we've had whole musical genres built on that kind of premise, and they've often been cultural reactions to say I'm thinking of punk music as like a disenfranchised generation of youngsters who grew up in England, um, off the back of bands that started off at ground level and ended up as stadium rock bands playing to hundreds of thousands of people, um, and the context of that art and that connection was just completely irrelevant to this younger generation who are then like, right, we don't want the reach of our music to get to a point where 200,000 people are in a stadium. We don't want the creative capacity of our playing style to be based on knowing 500 chords and augmented ninths and harmonic scales. And we just, if you can pick a guitar up and make some noise or hit a drum, you have hit the jackpot of expression needed, because we're angry and we need to make this expression that is a complete counterpoint to what we've just grown up around that we can't relate to. So, there's been whole genres about keep it small, keep it niche, keep it underground, and they still exist to this day. People take people get their enjoyment from things being underground, don't they? And for
Yeah, yeah, and I remember that for sure. And I remember, there's all these different ego layers within that where people kind of create a hierarchy of like it's kind of better if it's less known, and they feel exclusive if they're on the in with these people. Or like I remember being like, oh yeah, I knew them before they blew up, this type of thing.
yeah.
I'm one of the early ones, I'm really tapped in, like, whatever. And there's all these subtle subconscious like ego layers that can be actually at work there, because if something is helpful, then let it help whoever it's meant to help. And we don't want to be in the way of that, Like spirit's very rare. I mean, spirit doesn't say like hold the light. Like spirit always says shine the light ultimately. So if there's a hold something in, hold a gift in, then it's pretty much usually ego. Oh, gifts are to be given, right? If it's to be given, it doesn't mean that everyone is going to receive it, but you want to give it freely so that it can be received by anyone who's meant to. And you don't want to be, like caretaking or guarding it in a way that is like controlling over how it can be received. You want to let it go, but you want to give it, a good run. You want to like help it to like have its own legs, metaphorically, so that it can carry itself, rather than being dependent on you, which creates this again cord of attachment and entanglement to your personal identity, and comes as well from like ownership over this is mine. But if you really see it as something that's come through and it's not yours, who are you to hold on to it and to decide its trajectory? You've been given this as a carrier, and your job as a carrier is to carry it forward to wherever it's meant to go, and then let it be there and then move on to whatever's true for the moment of what wants to come. And what I've really noticed, an ex-partner of mine was a musician, and I've witnessed this pattern amongst a lot of creatives who are all channeling spirit, is that when people receive gifts and then they don't birth them and release them so they can be extended and received and be helpful, they get kind of spiritually constipated and creatively like jacked up, because they're holding all this energy that's not meant to be held by them. And then this whole ego identity gets formed in around that of like, recognize I'm not good enough, like I'll never make it, and I've got so much goodness and no one knows about it. And it's all being created by the ego itself. It's like holding, like I'm so good that I can't let anyone have what I have, or on some level of like I'm just so good and people don't understand me because they can't see my brilliance. It's just such fuel for the ego. So the more you can let it go and be like, this is nothing to do with me. This has nothing to do with me. It's a gift for whoever wants to receive it. Let them take it and let them enjoy it as I have enjoyed it coming through. And then we can move on. But what's next, spirit? Like put me to work, there's more gifts to receive. Let me receive them. Let me give them. Just keep that flow of receiving, giving, receiving, giving, because you're giving it to yourself. And this is one of the things I love to share with my students as well, is that when you have a gift and you hold it back, you're only denying that gift to yourself, because when you give it to someone, you're giving it to yourself, giving is receiving, as the course teaches us. So you receive it more deeply as you give it, and then that upgrades you and elevates you, expands your mind, expands your capacity to receive more, and it's also like it's an addition into your capacity to be a steward of the light. If you show that, yes, I'll receive this light and I'll give it, and I won't hold it and hold on to it and get, become so entangled in it that it's going to actually inflate my ego, because that's not what it's for. Then spirit, it's like, you're showing spirit, yes, I'm ready for more. I can handle more. And then you begin to receive more and more divine creative light, more and more divine creative inspiration. And it's coming through you and it's pouring through you, and you can let it go and you can let it go. And it's just this organic flow. And that's how we're all meant to be, right? So I always think that if you have a bunch of, and this is also for me, because I made some music with the father of my children, we haven't released it. And I've recently been really feeling like this is a block. Like if I'm going to be like activating into like the musical expression that I feel spirit guiding me to like use your channel this way again, I need to let these, I'm like, I just have the thought, I'm like, this could be helping someone, but my ego's like, well, we're not together anymore. Like I won't be able to give it. It's like these stories, like I won't be able to birth that in the right way. Like it's just going to like release and no one's going to listen to it. This is what the ego said, but who cares? Even if one person listens to it like in 1,000 years and Nyasha's long and gone, and that would be success, And the truth of the matter is, many more people will listen to it than what the ego wants to think. The ego's fear is like, no one will care. It will be left in the ground and it will be a waste. The irony is, by not sharing it, we are creating that. It is being wasted. No one is receiving it. Yeah, that's right. No one's listening to it because you're holding on to it. Ironic. The truth is, we are doing very thing that we fear will happen if we actually do the opposite. And if we do the opposite, this is the classic inversion of the ego, right? I say that if I do that, then I'll have the experience that I'm already having. The truth is, if I do that, I'll have the opposite experience to what I'm having. Look out for these games, ego.
This is the paragraph again from earlier, beautifully relevant. So for the ego must seem to keep fear from you to hold your allegiance, yet it must engender fear in order to maintain itself. Which is that exact scenario explained.
I'm gonna release that music. I'm gonna do it soon. Okay, where are we at? Okay, I'm gonna do it within the next month. I've said this on here. You can go and check on me. I'm gonna be on Spotify and you'll see released in September. That's my accountability to myself. Because I mean, when you look at it like that so clearly, it's just like that makes no sense. And I'm actually doing to myself the thing that my ego fears. Like I'm actually creating that scenario where no one is listening to it and no one is benefiting from it and no one knows about it. Like it's crazy. I'm like, that was a gift to be given. It's not a gift for me. It's a gift well, it's a gift for us, right? So yeah.
I use
Thank you
like
for supporting that reflection to go through. I'm really that gave me a good missing piece with like what was happening there.
perfect. That's part of the deal, man. So yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of like the importance in my own sort of observations would be like when you realize that the greatest possible reason to be in possession of something is to be able to give it away.
Yes.
And again, this sort of like pull the rug from under the orientation of the world of like, what the course says, to give and receive are one in truth. And when you are giving something and it demonstrates to you and the other that you're in possession of something, otherwise you wouldn't be able to give it.
Yes, giving is proof of having. Exactly.
Yeah. And that kind of point where you go, where you, like I say, where you realize that what higher reason could there be for me to be in possession of this than to give it away? And it's such a beautiful moment. It's just a
Yes.
changes in orientation that, again, come back to ripples and the reach of demonstration. There's no way we could possibly know how far that would travel. And as it says in the course, if you knew that everything was orchestrated by somebody or something that only has your highest possible good in mind in all times, it's like you wouldn't need to be worried about anything.
There's no point to fear in truth. Fear is just a distraction from us shining the light. It's one of
Exactly.
the main, it's one of the it is the main one, the ego, because everything else is just rooted in fear on some level. This is
Mm.
one, we're all here to shine the light. And so ego wants us to be fearful so that we don't shine. Fear of shining the light. And what will happen? Because the ego fears what happens when we shine the light. So then we start to make it about like all these things that could, bring up uncomfortable feelings. The ego fears the feeling of I am not important and I'm not recognized in my individuality and I'm not seen as good and I'm not loved and all these things. And
Mm.
so it creates scenarios where we don't shine the light, which is the thing that is going to reveal to us that we are loved and that
Mm.
we are loved, and that we have immense value, you know. So it wants us to hold it back. So really, we just want to give the light, want to give the gifts. We all have gifts to give, in every moment. We're always receiving more gifts too.
Mm. Yeah,
Um,
because
and it,
that was something that was coming to mind when you were talking earlier, and we were speaking about creativity, and that was maybe a specific in the conversation, but in truth, with the specific being irrelevant, it's the same deal in every moment of like being unblocked, isn't it? To give and for it to travel, but the giving to not necessarily be a piece of music as such, but the creation of an expression of love in an eternal moment, if you like.
yeah, yeah, you know, a, a, a loving thought,
Mm.
or just even a look right? It's a look of love, or a smile, or just like anything. Just so many ways that we can extend love, you know, in form and beyond form. But like, I know that sometimes the course can take us so like beyond form, but also I'm like spirit guides us to do all sorts of things. And often like ways that I've extended the light have involved, you know, going to a place, you know, and speaking in a way that's tangible and creating something that's has a physical content, has a form, words that have, you know, like we were saying earlier, like this, it's all symbolic, and it's all just a glimpse of what's true. We're just pointing towards it, but all these physical things, you know, that they're just signposts to the light that is powering them, you know, and whether it's consciously recognized or not by the person receiving, when you know, when a love is extended, it's always felt like there's always a deeper remembrance for both the giver and the receiver, that is love, that's love there, you know. It doesn't have to be conscious, you know, but it's always felt, and it's always recognized on some level, and it catalyzes awakening in ways that we don't understand consciously necessarily, but we know and we have faith in. Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I always love to say as well that even if your ego's been like majorly blocking you from giving the gifts and shining the light, you've still been shining the light in loads of ways all the time. So don't let your ego then be like, oh, I should have been shining the light more. This is what the ego does. Look at all the ways I've been blocking I'm like, you've been shining a lot, but you can shine a whole lot more. And don't feel any type of way about if you get blocked, and if your ego tries to like close the doors again, just keep opening them, right? The moment you realize that your ego's been holding you back is a moment to celebrate, and a moment to say, yeah, now I'm shining again. And I realize that I can shine right now. I can shine more. I can turn up the light, you know, and I have power to be the one that says yes. I can turn the frequency up. I can open myself more. I can give the gifts without attachment as much as I can. And I also want to say here that even if you're allowing yourself to be moved by, you know, this desire to be of service, to extend light, to extend love, and to give the gifts, and still there's like some ego layers there, like there's still this part of the ego that's like, I still want some validation. Don't worry about it for a second. Still move anyway. Move towards the light anyway, because that is also part of the purification of those layers, you know. We don't need to wait for there to be no ego thoughts or motivations in order to act, you know. It actually, us saying I choose, you know, the will of God and the will of spirit above listening to these ego thoughts, even though I know I'm recognizing their presence, like that is the healing in that moment, you know, because you're choosing the truth instead of the illusion. So you know, because I've done so many creative things where my ego's like been there at all stages saying various things, you know, and I've overcome, and then, you know, I get to that crescendo where I'm just joined in the light, because all my work is, you know, channeling and healing and transmitting, and we're there, and it's just like, wow, so profound, and wow, and I'm like, it's amazing, and I'm like, this is the fruits. And I had to go through all those layers of witnessing and ignoring the ego, witnessing and ignoring, overcoming, transcending, rising higher, rooting deeper into my will to serve, my will to be a vessel, you know. And I feel like every time I create with spirit anything, I get such a purification, and it's not easy to go through that process, which is why it's often safer for the ego to just say, I'm just not going to create. You know, this is my reason why I can't right now, and I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to risk that vulnerability. I'm not going to expose the light, you know, on all those egoic things that are holding me back, you know, the fear of lack of approval, you know, like the belief that I'm not good enough, the belief that no one cares. This was such a huge thing for me when I first started to share my like writing. I've always had that reflection that I have a gift with writing from a young age. I had a sense that I was meant to write. But again, this is another thing. I'm like, even though people say they love my writing, and I've been guided that one day I meant to write a book, I don't see myself as a writer. I'm like, I don't see myself as a musician. I don't see the only thing that I'm sort of seem to be okay with is being like, I'm a channel, you know. I'm like, that's fine. It can come through anyway. But I realized that there's a part of my ego for some reason that doesn't want to take ownership with like, okay, yeah, I'm here to, you know, what would it be like if I tried on that? Like, I'm a writer, I'm a musician, like that. There's actually a level of like confidence in myself which would come through more, and that's why I'm like resisting it, because I'm like, oh, but then I have to like actually be good. I have to be I'm not good enough to be a writer. I'm not good enough to call myself a musician. These are like subtle like layers there. I kind of lost my thread of what I was saying. What was I sharing about this?
Well, what I'm feeling into is like also the self-defeating logic. So it's almost like if the ego goes, "Oh no, you could have shone your light brighter back then, but you didn't," and it's like, "You're oh right, so you wanted to shine the light brighter, did you, ego?" And it's like, "Oh no, I didn't know."
No, yeah, judging ourselves, and then also that's also another manifestation of resistance to awakening. Rather than us just taking what we received and implementing it in the now, let us look back into the illusory past and then generate a feeling of like guilt and badness around who we've been, so we can stay stuck there instead of just shining the light. So there's just a lot of ways to look out for it, but however you've managed to do it at this point, it's perfect as well. Like there's no lack or loss. We're awakening at the perfect point. We see the ego when we're ready to, but we have the power to like see it more and catalyze that illumination more if we work in sincerity with our like prayer with the spirit. And I always say this as well, is that you can just say, "Oh yeah, show me my ego, show me my ego." But if you don't really mean it, there's only so much you're gonna see. But if you can get yourself into that space of like, I just want to know myself, and you feel it, and you're like, show me. I don't want to suffer like this anymore. I want to know the truth. Show me the truth. I'm willing to look at anything, and you mean it, and you've really joined in prayer with spirit, and spirit feel in a second the light is going to come and shine. So you just really get to trust that. And yeah, our journeys are all unfolding perfectly, and everything that we're meant to do, we're going to do it ultimately, even though it doesn't always feel that way when we feel super blocked and like we're holding the light, and we're the ego's layering onto us about how we've been letting the ego win as well. But the ego won't win in truth. It appears to temporarily win, but it can't actually win because it's not real. So we don't really need to worry about that so much. We just need to cultivate our will to awaken, know that we are worthy of being a channel for the light in any moment, no matter how we're feeling. And this is another one as well, like that's been really big for me on my path, is that sometimes like I'm in my ego story and my like doesn't happen so much these days, but it's happened maybe like within I'd say it still happens occasionally, but in the past it's happened more, where I would be feeling down and I'm in the ego mind, ego thought system, and I'm feeling way down, and I have a scheduled like class that I'm teaching and transmitting, and my ego's like, you can't do this because you're in this down space, and how are you going to do this, and like your energy is so low, like what good can you give to these people right now? And then the power is to say, I'm going to show up anyway to shine the light, even though my ego wants to like cancel and withdraw, but that's not an option. I've ruled off that option. So then I go in and, I'm there and I show up as I am and I share, I don't always, my ego doesn't always want to tell the full picture, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not feeling so, I've been in a process or something. And then I say yes to the light shining. And it's happened when I've been like physically sick or mentally sick. And then it's just like often, actually, pretty much always even more powerful because of that. It's like, no, I'm not letting the ego win. I choose the light. I choose the truth. I choose to let that come through me instead right now. And then the anchor for like me saying yes to service that was created in the past by me having this preset out appointment then becomes this like doorway into like liberation, because I said yes. The past version of me said yes, and it's then an anchor that holds me in the moment and calls me higher, enables me to serve more powerfully and to receive this immense like transmission of light myself. And at the end of the session, I'm like beaming and feeling so good. And we always had that power, right? But I noticed for sure that in the act of being in service, somehow like I'm often able to give myself permission to access the light in a way that I don't always fully on my own. So I think I always feel like it's very powerful that there's something about joining with others in the light that it gives us strength, spiritual strength, and together our joint will brings forth like a even more powerful transmission. And also the act of service as well is really crucial there. It's like I'm not just doing it for me, it's for me and for those that are receiving it. And it's just so powerful. And whenever I'm in service, I'm like, I just need to do this every day. This is great. This is the best feeling ever. So I'm actually in that phase of my life at the moment of my journey where I'm like, let me just create as many opportunities as possible for me to give my gifts, for me to shine, for there to be lots of like other anchors for the light that I've channeled. Because at the moment, I've not like created many like meditations or prayers or like, you know, self-paced courses, even though I've done loads of live courses and experiences. You know, I realized I could create a lot more things like anchors for the light that anyone could then dive into at any point on their journey perfectly. And I don't have to be available to be like, here, take this thing right now. You know, so I want to create more anchors, like I say, just give the gifts and place the torch in more places and in more different places on different social networks. And, you know, just create these anchors. I just want to put the anchors for the light and just let the torches be held by more than it's me, you know, so that it can just live, you know. So when you put music on Spotify, you're letting Spotify hold that torch, you know. And like, so you don't have to hold it all the time. It's there, and you know, your job maybe is just to direct people. It's like, hey, there's a torch being held over there for you. You want to like, you know, receive that light. It's there. But yeah, we can make it easier for ourselves by having these external anchors, you know, which can other people can tap into and receive from. And also where we're like, you know, in relationship with others, they have the expectation of us to share. That's why it can, for example, with your releasing music, if you tell like, you know, it doesn't matter how many people it is, if you tell, like, say your little community online, like, hey, I'm going to release this music by this point, that creates an external expectation to receive the light at that point. So then no matter what your ego tries to do, you're far more likely to show up and give the light at that point, you know.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful thing to tap into, this honoring other people, you know, and using that in service by it makes you more present. It makes you like being answerable. If it something I sometimes refer to is like having a sponsor. People involved in AA having a sponsor is a great example of it. It's like you're answerable. You have to show up to somebody and be answerable to them. And from the people I've spoken to, say, even if you just have to make a phone call in the evening to say, I'm still here today, I'm still on the path, I'm still clear. Put the phone down, that's that. You don't even have to speak to some people. There's some sponsors will say, leave me a message on my answering machine. But that actual extension to be answerable to somebody else, it can really, really hold you in the moment, and it can really help you, because in isolation, we know that, you know, that's why addiction is such a difficult thing, because we police our own actions. And if there's not somebody there to go, you know, it might be like, Leon, you've you know, you've had 4 cups of tea with 3 sugars in. You know, it could be something like that, or it could be, you know, you've had 10 cigarettes today, or you know, you've had a bottle of vodka today, or whatever the addiction might be is kind of irrelevant. But the same principle is when you're only answerable to yourself, that self-discipline, people really struggle with it. Whereas if there's somebody else there to turn to and say, you know, and also it can be something that you consciously do with someone who does mean a lot to you. It could be like, can I check in with you and just say to you, can I make myself answerable to you? It doesn't have to come from the other person to say, look, I want you to phone me up every day. It could be like, would it be okay if I phoned you and just let you know where I'm at today? And it's a very, very powerful thing. And I think it's rooted in this aspect where we're told, say, with the course material, you know, where 2 or more join, spirit rushes in. It's just a simple mathematical truth of just like extension, expansion. In isolation, we're not as strong as when we join.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I've really experienced that, you know, and I think that shining on the ego in a group is a whole different thing, because I, for example, look at my ego every day. I'm like looking at the ego consciousness and I witness the ego thoughts, but then I notice that sometimes like my ego's like, I don't want to share that one. Like that I can keep that stuff just with me and the spirit, you know. That's too bad. I'll be judged for that one, and people will think I'm really like, I don't know what they'll think, you know. And then in my online group, we really went through, like, we've been working together for, you know, since January, and then we came to a point where like I realized that I was like, okay, I can shine more on my ego by sharing my ego, like with my ego more with them, because unconsciously, when there's anyone who's in a role of a guide or a teacher, the ego can't not create a pedestal. Like it's very hard to not do that on some level. Them to think I have something that they don't, or like that I don't have but even though I tell them I'm always doing the work and I share a bit, like they still create the idea. So I was just like, let me just make the ego vulnerable and share more. And
Mm.
so I started sharing more authentically, like some of my personal ego struggles, and they were so grateful. And it was also really good for me because subconsciously I'm not sharing it's because I think I'm unworthy of love on some level, or I'm not good enough. It's just still kind of ego constructs ultimately. And then it opened up the space where they all started to, piece by piece, have been sharing so much more rawly about what's been going on with their ego. And even within the group being like, oh, I've been comparing myself to X, Y, and Z, thinking that people are getting treated differently in the group. Or one of them was like, I thought I was, above this group. And like, we've really been shining within the space and like showing the implementation of the teachings by like witnessing the ego and how it functions. And we're getting into such a level of deep work that, if we hadn't been all journeying with these teachings and then really applying it together and shining together, we wouldn't be able to it's such alchemy. It's so powerful to see like the benefits of being able to really journey as a group
Mm.
with this light that is just illuminating and chipping away until we feel more and more brave in the knowing of ourselves that we can shine on the ego and we don't feel so bad because we're not like, oh, they'll think this is what I am, because we all know the truth. We're working in the context of the truth. So let us show the illusion for what it is.
Mm.
And it's been amazing to witness. Amazing, incredible. Like I feel so honored to be able to be of service and to be awakening together and to be, oh, wow, it's so profound. There's nothing like it. And so even though the course is self-study, I really have had the experience with, sharing with this group that when we really join together and,
Mm.
not only talk about the teachings and apply them, but also join in prayer and like just really feel the self together, join as one self. And it's just, I don't know, it just takes it somewhere else, like beyond just like ideas, it's like we're feeling it. We're really like in the living implementation of what is guided, which is like now moment sorting of thoughts essentially, and being like, this stuff is not nonsense not to listen to. This is a truth. There's no shame in looking at what the ego does, right? We don't need to feel any type of way because we're not shining on us. That's not us that's doing that. That's not those aren't our thoughts. They're not us. That's just the one ego being what the ego voices. Insane, crazy, addicted to suffering and specialness and unworthiness and lack and all those things that don't feel good. And we're not alone. And what always happens whenever any of us share is that everyone's like, oh, I felt that as well. Like, oh yeah, me too. And oh, wow. And they're like, oh, I feel closer. I feel more connected. I'm not alone in that. I recognize you. I feel you. And so it's just so much of the time I feel like humans are out here, like egos are out here trying to pretend to be somewhere they're not, to be more evolved than they are, and to not struggle in the ways they do. And what that creates is just this whole
Yeah,
dream of everyone pretending, and then everyone thinks they have to uphold the standard at which
that's
we're
right.
performing ourselves.
Yeah.
Instead of being real about, okay, this is the work, this is the truth, and this is where I'm at in the work, and this is how it feels to be there in the work, which
Mm.
immediately is going to bring everyone together who's
Mm.
at that same space, or even if they're in a different place. And I've really been working with this in my online space more about being even more authentic about because people see me channeling the light, they're like, wow, you're so high, and then my ego on some level like wants them to perceive me as just the like divine channel who's just so conscious and awake. And it's like, no, actually the reason I'm able to do that is because of ego work, and this is where I'm at. I'm doing ego work every single day, and this is the reality of my current ego work, and
Mm.
I'm sharing it because what only my ego would have me not share it.
Right.
And it's been, the response has been incredible. Like when I did these stories where I was really authentic about some of my like ego beliefs around my like physical body and appearance, like the response, I was not expecting it, but like so many messages from people being like,
Mm.
wow, you're so brave, thank you so much, I feel so seen, I can relate,
Mm.
this is so powerful, this is so inspiring. And I'm like, wow, me liberating myself from what I thought was just my own little personal like self-obsessed ego cage of not good enough,
Mm.
and shining the light there and showing others it's okay to acknowledge that you have these things, that
Mm.
these body focus, like anchored ego thoughts
Mm.
rooted in lack and not good enough.
Mm.
uh, it was such permission for people, and it really empowered them. And I'm like, wow, our healing, really, your healing is always the healing for everyone, really, because I love those moments where I see it in my group space too, when I have a shift and breakthrough, And even if I don't say it, like I witness it ripple through the group because it's in how I be and how I transmit, and it's felt, and it's all one, you know. So yeah, it's
I'm
beautiful.
so glad you said the word permission then, because it was almost like deafening in my mind throughout everything that you were saying. Then it was just going permission, 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 and it's just it it shouldn't, it shouldn't go together, should it? That, like you said, you get people who want to just portray this immaculate journey of just an unblemished like navigation through life without anything other than like la unicorns and fairy dust. And it's like, we can all feel that. I'll often say on the channel about the Carol Howe, one of the greatest course teachers there are. And she explains that in the 100% of communication, 7% is words, the words we choose. The next 13% is how we gesticulate and how we animate those words with our voice and our body and blah, blah, blah. And then 80% of communication is the energetic signature, the feel behind it. So when we do say, dude, I'm having a terrible day today, or, it doesn't have to be a terrible day. It could be just like, yeah, I have ups and guess what? What? I've got an ego. Really? What, you? Yeah, yeah. We've all got one. If you were like that, and then say, oh God, I've got an ego. Yeah, I know you've got. We've
Me
all got
too.
one. And that permission, because interestingly, another thing I was thinking when you were describing that process was the common use of guilt by association, and it's something I experienced in my childhood, being connected to my dad and his sort of criminal activities, was like the shame and the rejection and the concealment, these like really strong ego aspects of like, what's the word that you keep using? Like, it's not constrict, is it? What's
Correct.
contract? Yeah, brilliant. That, keep it small because of guilt by association. And that's been like maybe my go-to definition, which is probably like society's go-to definition of that, but also guilt by association when talking about ego thought system. It's like quite an interesting phrase, isn't it? Guilt by association. So permission again is like, it's almost like a cheat code or something that
Yeah.
bypasses and goes right, And on paper, holding your hands up and saying that you're not having this immaculate Disney existence would seem counterintuitive, but really it's actually what makes everybody's shoulders drop. And like you said, then the floodgates open and be, oh God, I done it, and then how beneficial is that?
Yeah, it builds trust, it builds connection. Yeah, it makes you relatable. You're saying to people, you can be a channel for the light and you can still be in your process of ego unraveling. You don't have to just be fully enlightened in order to like allow the light come through you. And also I love, to think about that in the context of, say spiritual teachers, where sometimes people can be really harsh and so on, where they obviously still in their ego work. And so they're on some level, have distortions playing out from their ego. But then in other ways, they're like revealing divine light and truth, and they're teaching and they're helping so many people. And sometimes people are like, well, I can't take the light from them because they got an ego. And I'm like, but if you find the light helpful, don't resist it. Take what's helpful and learn from the rest. People don't need to be written off completely just because they're still in a process. But what creates that is this belief that we have this, it's rooted in this sense of perfection and this sense of like, this belief in sin, ultimately, because you're believing that they are that stuff, right? So you're believing, well, I can't take the light from them. That light isn't real because that is real. So you're using the ego to discredit the light and then writing it all off instead of being like, no, when I feel the light, that's the truth in them. Let me focus on that. Let me receive that. If they're transmitting truth and light and love, I'll receive that. Let me receive that in and let it awaken that in me. And if I feel, resistance to the ego I witness in them, let me use that to alchemize the ego in me, because that's not the truth of them, and that means you give yourself permission to be there, because if we don't acknowledge that we still have work to do, we're not going to do it. And that's one of the things that has helped me the most on this path, where I feel like I experience, quite a lot of acceleration with teachings. I'm able to integrate them. I'm able to make good progress. I'm able to have breakthroughs like consistently.
Mm.
But it's because I'm always aware that I don't know what I don't know, that my ego wants me to think I'm further along than I am in the work, and I can't see what I can't see, and I'm praying to be shown because I know there's always deeper to go. So I'm continuously in the work of let me go deeper, let me go deeper. I'm not where I think I am.
Mm.
Then just chips away at, more quickly at what could have been an ego wall of like false awakening.
Mm.
Which is a manifestation of resistance to awakening. It enables me to just chip away because I'm using my will to say that's false, that's the truth. Let me get to the truth. Let me peel back this then spiritual ego that's being created around the ego consciousness, so I can really let the light shine there.
Mm.
And yeah, it's across the dream in all the differing spiritual lineages and paths, like I really see this as being one of the big blocks that we encounter, which is where we create this spiritual ego. And then we want to be seen as flawless and perfect and evolved and awakened. And then it creates this, then it pushes all of the ego into the shadow. And then if someone's then shining on the ego, we see the images of people wanting to hide it and deny it. Instead of just being like, yeah, I have ego work. I'm doing ego work still. I'm not doing ego work because they want to pretend it's not there anymore, which is the irony because it's the block to the real will, the truth of what we're teaching. So we have to really practice what we preach and say, yeah, I'm in the work. I'm in the work until there is truly no more work to be done because I have fully remembered myself as love, and therefore only loving thoughts ever come into my mind, and I'm walking around like Jesus, And unless you're really there and you can do miracles as Jesus did, then there's still work to do. So, let us do the work and let us not waste more time. There's no waste, but let us not expend more energy pretending, because it's so much more work to try and pretend to be somewhere else is than to just do the actual work that's there.
Yeah, this is something that I bring up a lot with people, and I'll say, if there is just one mind that's not really separate from God, and it's projected this thought of separation into a universe via a body and separate bodies and blah, blah, blah. And we're not really here, and the dream's over, and we're reviewing mentally something which has already gone by. It's really important that we look at the symbolism of the communication we're having with ourselves, and we be honest with ourselves. It's exactly what you're saying. It's like there's only me in soliloquy, in a conversation with myself. So I'm only going to deceive myself if I pretend that I'm further down the road than I am. And not only that, I'm going to limit the potential for this conversation that I'm having with myself. And I'll sometimes use foreign language as an example and say to people, like, if I said to you that I was fluent in Spanish, and you then started speaking Spanish to me, or if I said to you, I can speak Spanish, and you're fluent in Spanish, you start speaking Spanish to me because I've told you I can speak Spanish. But if I said to you, oh, Nyasha, I can speak like 5 or 6 words, you go, oh, cool, what are they? And I tell you, and you go, oh, I tell you what, here's one that I'd go with. Here's number 7, and now I've got 7 words, and I can start to expand at a rate that's realistic, suits me, and is going to move towards being fluent in a language. But you're
Yes, yes.
you're only going to go from what I've said. So it's important that I'm just truthful and just say, this is where I'm at, because I'm only
And
in conversation with myself.
exactly. And also what happens as well in these situations, for example, is that if we don't want to be honest and we've performed, that then what happens is we often try and discredit like the reflection, like your Spanish isn't good enough or something, or you want to run away from the reflection instead of learning from it. You want to discredit it, make it bad, make it wrong in your mind, misperceive what you're seeing so that you can feel a sense of rightness. No, my Spanish, they don't speak the right Spanish, or just as an example, right? My Spanish is more real, theirs is this or that, whatever it is. Discredit, put them down in your perception, move away from them so that you can maintain your sense of, I have something, which you don't truly have, instead of being like, let me learn from them. What are they showing me? I feel bad about the gaps in my knowledge when I'm witnessing them because I performed. So let me acknowledge that I have been performing and let me learn and let me actually fill those gaps in with what's being given. And I've noticed this, like the more I've awakened the light, and my intention is anywhere I go, as much as I'm consciously able to beam love, beam love. Look, when I'm looking someone in the eyes, to beam them love in my voice, for the sounds that I'm sharing, to be beaming love, everything to just be like, let me just pour love as much as I can wherever I'm going. Obviously, sometimes I'm not in that position as much and I can't hold it, but when I am, often it's just an overflow. And then what I notice is that the images I see of my siblings have different responses. Some people are like drawn to me and like want to connect, and then some people are like don't want to talk to me, or it's disarming and uncomfortable for them, even though I'm just trying to give love, and just kindness. People sometimes try and project or bring me down on some level in their mind, or even say things sometimes about me or to, and I'm like, oh, it's just another call for love. But it's because it's a mirror. And I remember earlier on in my journey being around people that had revealed more light than me, and my ego was like, I don't want to be. They didn't have to say anything. I was already very tapped in, sensitive, psychic, energetically aware. So the moment I'm around someone who's more like aware, and I know that they can see me, I'm seeing myself, and I'm like, I don't want to look in the mirror. I don't want to look in the mirror. But the mirror is showing us so much. The light is the best mirror. It doesn't even have to speak, and people can see their ego. So the more you undo the ego, the more you're shining the light, and then you just without you don't even have to do anything. Anywhere you go, the ego is going to feel like exposed. And it's so I've really learned, like, okay, what I notice is that before, and sometimes my ego might want to come in then in response to what I like witness as like the reflection, like someone's then judging, like trying to like bring me down or whatever, like is my ego going to go into weakness or take it personally? And I'm like, no, I know that my work is to keep shining, to shine even brighter. If anyone, like, if I have to shine even brighter, I have to love even more. So I would sometimes people withdraw from me, and I'm like, in the past when I was younger, my ego would be like, oh, they're withdrawing from me, so like I won't let this love like extend as much to them somehow. Like I'll create a closure in my heart. And now I like, I don't impose myself, but if I catch an eye with them, or if I have a chance to speak to them, I say hello, I love even more strongly. I like beam love to them regardless of how they're being. It's such a teacher for me and for them. And I've had moments where doing this has completely transformed relationships out of special hate on some level into like close connected relationships, and it's been so beautiful to witness that. And it's again, like we were talking about earlier, being the leading force of love, choosing not to collapse into the ego, the false architecture of the ego, which is one of protection rooted in fear, and instead expand into the all-powerful essence of love, which then just kind of shines away all the other stuff in the way, and then teaches everyone in the situation so powerfully without anything needing to be even said or anything needing to change, And it was so empowering for me, because I used to feel like, oh, why don't people love me sometimes? And I'm like, I don't need people to love me. Let me just love anyone. Let me love as much as I can. My work is to look at the mirror of the wall to love that I see in myself when I witness theirs. If I see a reflection in someone of closure to love, it either mirrors to me like where there could be a wall that could come, or like a subtle layer of it, and I'm like, let me blast through that. Let me blast through that. Let me love anyway. Let me love through it. And I know that that's the medicine that's really needed in the situation for everyone, me and for them, and however they take that is their path. But yeah, like I love to, like, all of it is a mirror. Anywhere you go, this is happening. We're witnessing how open are we to love, based on like what's the feedback we're getting, the information we're receiving. We have that choice. We can allow ourselves to collapse in and contract our heart and our light, or we can choose to shine brighter and to love past all the walls, And yeah, that's the gift. That's the gift that you're always giving. It's your love. It's the love that you are.
That's the fruit.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing.
It's been so great. I know we went over time, but I've been loving it so much. I'm like, this is what I meant to, what else could I be doing but this? This has just been so nourishing and so much light, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, really good fun. I've got like that terrible situation where my face hurts from smiling. So when we finish recording, I'll go and watch the news maybe for an hour. Lower the vibe.
So funny.
So yeah, I tell you what I'm thinking to finish is like I've sensed like a bit of silence where we could pass the baton of like just a few words. I feel like there's a short sort of sentence or something to be formed that we could do between the two of us and sort of drop into silence and whatever if you hear something and I'll add to it and we'll just do that for a little while until it feels like it's said its bit. What do you reckon?
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not
You,
something that I've done
you,
before, but
you start and then I'll fill up.
mm. In the joining of our purpose, we serve one another, ourselves, and God's plan.
In every moment we gift love, we expand in our receiving of self and essence. Our purpose is simple. Be as we are. Love truly. For love is. And we are that.
As we awaken to what never sleeps, we move towards the light that isn't apart from us, and we're not apart from it.
We realize that truth has always been true. But we never left. That home is in us, as it's always been. That we are all good things. One love, one light, one mind, one spirit. Remembering ease, remembering essence, remembering eternity, remembering heaven.
Encoded within the light of what we are is the memory of everything that unites us and connects us. There's nowhere that the light doesn't extend to, always has no direction. And we rest in God.
We rest in God.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
So good.
Awesome. Wow. Deep gratitude for sharing your time and your thoughts. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's such an honor. I'm so grateful. It's been such a beautiful joining. What a
Mm.
gift. So much light revealed. I'm it's just yeah, gratitude, just gratitude. What else? What else is there to say? It's so beautiful. This is it. This is it. This is the good
This is
stuff.
it. Yeah. So look forward to watching the news after we've finished recording, and be reminded of all that low vibrational activity that's going on, and limit the love.
No, thank you. I'll stay here.
Got to subject everyone to a bit of English humour. Rare that I have an English guest, so they've got to come along on our journey of taking Mickey.
Oh,
But yeah, thank you so much. Beautiful, amazing. I look forward to seeing how the light of this conversation travels to everyone it's meant to reach.
yes, me too. Thank you for having me. And anyone who's, well, all of you who have received this, please
Mm,
feel free to reach out and send a message to Leon and me,
mm.
letting us know. I always love to hear, how the light is received. It's such a beautiful affirmation of why we're doing all of this. And you can find me on Instagram at the Ascension Seed, which I think is written there. So
Yeah,
I'd love to connect with you if you feel called.
brilliant. Nyasha, thank you very much indeed for being here.
Thank you so much.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
And you.
Cheers.
Bye.